hot tip, Rick. I don't think that's the best example you could use, and here's why. I think somebody who is really studied on this stuff is going to tell you, no, that commandment doesn't say thou shalt not kill. It says thou shalt not murder. And murder is the defined
in the new translation.
Right. Well, defining. I'm telling you this because this is what other people have told me. Right. Like this isn't something I personally believe, but they will say that murder is defined as unlawful killing. So as long as that killing is lawful, you're good. And if you're following God's law and you're doing it within the correct parameters, totally okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So how do you deal with that?
I have a way to deal with that.
Go for it. Shannon has an idea.
If you want to appeal to Bible passages.
Yeah.
I would I'd go to Numbers. I think it's 22, test for the unfaithful wife. That one is one where God actively aborts a baby if the woman is
correct.
Yeah. So there, this is one of the ones, like you, Rick, I read the Bible, and that's the passage I got to when I was still a Christian and just threw the book on the ground and was like, God damn it. God damn it. So the test for the unfaithful wife, if you leave and you think your wife is cheating on you, you can take her back to the tabernacle. The priest will take some dirt off the floor and put it in with holy water and say an incantation over it. And then the woman drinks it. If she was unfaithful and got pregnant as a result, then she'll miscarry. And if she was faithful, then she gets to keep the baby. So in my perspective, that was God committing an abortion. Now, some people brought it up saying that, it was her leg to rot. So she didn't, that based on that interpretation, God didn't commit an abortion. But here's the thing. It also said that she will be completely infertile for all her days. Now, if you are pregnant with a baby and are suddenly rendered infertile from that moment till the rest of your days, like, what happens to the baby? Right? Yeah. The only that essentially means that you can thwart God's plan. And also, like, sorry, Dan, I can sense you're going in. You go. We both have a billion things to say.
So we can go on Bible rants all day, but I feel like, Rick, you had some more stuff you wanted to say, but here's a greater point here. Because I'm trying to argue with things people will say. Here's another thing. Okay, so like you got to remember when it comes to the killing on the Sunday thing, that's respecting the Sabbath. Remember, Jesus broke the Sabbath, right? He performed a miracle on the Sabbath, and when he was confronted on that, he said, "Was the Sabbath not made for man, or man made for the Sabbath?" So his whole point, like even Jesus doesn't care about the Sabbath, right? Christianity doesn't always cross with Judaism because it's like Christianity is Jesus's take on Judaism. Like it's not even consistent within itself. So like you got to be careful with this stuff. But another thing, point I was trying to get to this as well was Christians will also say, well, that's the old covenant and the old covenant doesn't apply anymore. This is called covenant theology. And that by Jesus dying on the cross, and this is what I was taught growing up, and doing the whole thing, those old rules we don't have to follow anymore because Jesus' sacrifice was the fulfillment of those rules. Now, it does beg the question, well, what rules do we follow now? And that's going to depend on which Christian you ask. But these are some examples.
That's honestly that's honestly like one of my biggest, I don't want to say I don't like church because I understand the positive magnitude that it can bring to somebody. So I'm not that person where I'm against it. I'll still go, but that's my biggest thing about church. Like they'll have an example like it's I don't understand how they're gonna pick and choose from the Bible what they want to preach. Like, for example, the Bible says not to eat shellfish, but then they're gonna say you can go ahead and do that because
New Covenant,
whatever, it's the Old Testament.
New Covenant,
you ask them why can't have and if you ask them, hey, can I have tattoos? They're going to point into the Old Testament and point out you can't have tattoos because it says here. But then if I ask them, are you still eating shellfish or shrimp? They're going to, most of the time, most people that I would talk to would say, yes, I do.
Cafeteria Christianity.
Okay, well, then how do you, God, like, are you nervous about me getting tattoos and you eating shellfish? Like, if that's a checklist in God's, the book of life, if one of those is a checklist, aren't you nervous about not checking that off? Like, as a good thing. But I guess that's one of my biggest arguments. Where
and again, they'll just straight up say those laws don't matter. I mean, that's just something you just got to be ready for. So, it's good to know that, because the Old Testament stuff, I feel like it's easier to argue because you can just find a verse that's like atrocious and it's just, and point that out, right? New Testament stuff, it gets a little bit trickier because you're working with different epistles and you're also working with the Gospels and stuff. So yeah, it gets a bit trickier. But at the end of the day, remember, any kind of weird inconsistency you find, there's always going to be a rationalization for it, and you just kind of have to suss that out. And so it's good to know all the arguments,
right?
Yeah, exactly. There's always going to be an apologetics for everything, and I mean everything you encounter in the Bible. So it's good to know what those apologetics are, so you can see how bunk they are, because it's some level of bunk usually, not all the time, but most of the time.
I have a fun one for the New Testament.
Yeah.
If somebody refers to the New Testament, you can ask them why, if they're all individual attestations of the personal witness of the risen of Jesus throughout his life, why is Matthew almost 80% Mark? And if Matthew was written by Matthew, why does the story of Matthew's deconversion differ in the story of Matthew?
And see, you're assuming that people have read the Bible, and that's what gets fun. I didn't know that. I didn't know that until an atheist told me that, and I was a Christian for like years. And it was like,
really?
Yeah. I mean, I've read the Gospels, but I wasn't doing cross-examination between the different accounts. Like, I didn't understand. But one thing I wanted to talk about, the tattoo thing. Yeah. I have a fun story about that, because I talked about that with somebody before, and they gave a defense I had never heard in my life, which was, well, God says your body's a temple. And what do we do with temples? Well, we decorate them. And so my tattoos are decorated.
I knew you were going there.
I was like, I guess. Like, all right, I guess. Can you graffiti the temple too? Like, does anything count? Like, I don't know.
Isn't there a scripture in there where it says that there's? Isn't there a scripture where it says that God has like a tattoo of us on his hand or something like that?
In Revelation. Yeah. So in Revelation, it's talking about Jesus, and Jesus has like these crazy looking tattoos on him and stuff. And also we're supposed to have tattoos on our foreheads if we're the mark of the beast and stuff. Like it's all crazy. But Revelation doesn't really. Revelation is so far from regular Christianity that even regular Christians will tell you, like, yeah, I don't know what the heck's going on there. Like, that's kind of wild. So. Yeah.
There's one of them. I believe Revelation 13:1, where I talked to somebody about it, and it says, I don't know exactly, but this is the way it went. Paraphrasing again, it said that there's going to be a beast, and he's going to talk. He's going to speak like a dragon, and I'm like, what? This doesn't sound.
Yes,
it's godly. This sounds so evil.
Dragons,
like kind of like black magic.
If you
still argue they're dinosaurs.
There is a chapter of lost extra parts of the book of Daniel in which Daniel talks to a dragon. That's the story.
Right.
Well, the dragon. It's like, yeah, that was and I guess they decided, I don't know why they threw that part out. Maybe because it wasn't in all the stories. I think that's the reason why. Or also maybe because there's no dragons. But if you look at even early Christian fathers, and I'm trying to remember which one specifically. I believe it was, which one was it? I can't remember, but one of them talks about a belief he has in like phoenixes, which is interesting, not because of the Bible, but because of a story he heard one time. And he writes about how the phoenix is a metaphor for God because X, Y, and Z, I guess because the phoenix rises, and just like how Jesus rises. Like he's writing about this metaphor, but with the assumption that phoenixes are actual real birds you can find in the world. So yeah, like the Christian authors, they didn't have any better perspective of the world than we did. If not, they were worse at it. So like they're not authorities on my life in any particular.
Have you read any of the non-canonical gospel? Well, he's mentioned the infancy gospel is crazy. Which one is the one where Jesus literally carries around a talking cross, like a flaming talking cross?
I don't know about him carrying it
Is
around.
that Peter?
There is one where a cross talks to Peter.
Yeah, it's Peter. It's Peter then.
Yes.
Yeah, like there's like a talking.
And that was stuff that didn't make the Bible.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing, Rick. The first question you're going to ask is, how did they determine the books of the Bible?
I did a whole stream on that with a New Testament scholar.
And guess what? We don't really know. We don't know. If at best it was democracy, like they voted on it. Human beings voted on what they thought was legit.
Based on their personal theological perspective.
And it's like God's word shouldn't be based on democracy. Like, that's like, I feel like God should be like, no, that's the one. But like, that's not how it happened.
Yeah. I had a New Testament scholar on. His name was Ian Mills, and he was really, really interesting. And we talked about canon formation. And he's a Christian. He's a super cool guy. And he was literally like, every church had a different set of scrolls. Some of them we don't even have anymore. Some of the, what went into canon had like almost everything to do with the individual theological perspective of the constitution of the church at the time. There was probably some politics, and that it is what it is. So you should read all of it, including the non-canonical stuff, because it all gives you a holistic perspective. And there's even different Bibles that do and don't have different books.
Oh yeah.
Not everyone has the same number of books.
Yeah, that's the thing I talk about with people too. When they say, "Oh, have you read the Bible?" I can literally be like, "Which one?"
Which one? Yeah, it's not even about translation. It's about the number of books.
Yeah, like
canon.
Different ones, and people don't even. That blows people's minds. If you want to blow a Christian's mind, tell them there's multiple different Bibles, and they'll be like, "What?" Like they don't know. But yeah,
no, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, Catholics and Protestants do not use the same Bible.
No.
They do. You go to a Catholic church.
I know Catholics don't. Yeah.
But Eastern Orthodox does not use the same Bible. The Coptic Church does not use the same Bible.
Oh my God! Put a KJV onlyist in front of an NIV.
Yeah.
Like, and then just watch the two of them argue, and you'll be an atheist. Yeah.
Christianity's been broken since day one. That's the point we're trying to make here. Also, like, you can see that in modern history too. Like, look at David Koresh. David Koresh was an offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventists, and that was already an offshoot of another thing. Like, it never ends. Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism, and I try to make that point too. And that people don't comprehend that. They're like, "Oh yeah, Mormonism is based off Christianity." Guess what? Christianity's not first either. And guess what? Judaism, you can go back to that too. There's some roots there that aren't monotheistic. So yeah,
Akkadian, Sumerian.
Yeah, it's turtles all the way down. So anyway,
I was really interested, if you guys don't mind me asking a quick question. Can I ask what denomination of, like, if it was Christianity or religion you guys came out of?
Oh, sure. I was an Anglican.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Anglican, which is like Catholic light.
Oh.
It's like, yeah.
Except Catholics are idolaters. So there's that.
Right. Yeah. I grew up kind of a mix. Actually, I grew up in the Methodist church. And then I think my parents decided it was too liberal. And so I went to a Baptist church. Yeah. And I mean, it was not all Methodist churches are liberal. First of all, I want to break that right there. We would not be having this conversation about gay marriage in the Methodist church if that was true. But also, yeah, I spent my teenage years in the Baptist church. And so that's where I grew up, around a lot of the evangelical tradition and stuff. But I still kind of thought like a Methodist. I can't say at any particular time, because my beliefs were definitely not in one box or another. I think they kind of were different at different times. But yeah, those are my two main influences.
Oh yeah, I always like to ask that question because I grew up Pentecostal, like where the women have to wear skirts below their knees.
Yeah, see, we thought you guys were here.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. That's what the Baptists really don't like the Pentecostals. They don't like any denominations, but the Pentecostals in particular, they don't like. I think it's just the showmanship. I think they get a little jealous.
And the Mennonites think that you're all assholes.
Yeah. And the atheists, it's all bad. Anyway.
When I was questioning, real quick, when I was questioning everything, I actually called Kent Hovind on the phone one time. Because his numbers, his numbers on his, And I actually called him one time, and I asked him what denomination he is, and I believe he told me Baptist or it was some sort of Baptist. And he asked me what I am. I told him I'm Pentecostal. And this is when the whole scripture of God is not the author of confusion kicked in for me, where I'm like, wait, well, when he told me the reason why I should probably leave the Pentecostal church, he related it to Cain and Abel, and how Cain brought a beautiful offering, and and then Abel brought the lamb. And he compared it to Pentecostals as saying you're doing too much for your religion. You're bringing God too much.
See,
and that's
we
when
were
I was
talking
like, wow. See, I grew up so opposite. I grew up like, no, you girls. I mean, I'm not a girl, but I'm saying like they would look at the women, and if their skirt's above their knees, it's complete. It's just harassment.
Yeah.
Almost like you got to put your skirt below. You got to do this, and that's when the whole thing finally just started shaking my head, like, because I never looked at it that way. I never looked at it as like we're doing too much for God. I thought it wasn't enough.
See, that's a great example. We were talking about this earlier of using a metaphor, but the metaphors aren't evidence. That's just a metaphor. You know, like he didn't actually explain to you demonstrable reasons why his interpretation was better than yours. I'm assuming just based on what you told me. Sounds like he just gave you a metaphor of why you're wrong, which isn't a good way to talk to people or argue your case. But yeah, lots of problems.
Right.
It's bad all day. We could talk about all the different stuff. We got one more call that showed in at the very end that I want to get to. So I'm going to go ahead and get to them real quick. Rick, thanks for calling in. That was a great conversation. Hey. I loved every minute of that. Sorry, I had to hit drop before he had the last thing to say, but that was fun.